All right, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to be hosting this event with a huge big thanks to UTS Startups for the wonderful venue and all the wonderful operational support in the background. This event today is a very exciting collaboration between Scalare Partners, LegalVision, Nomos, and indeed our fabulous panellists from Blackbird, AirTree, and Aura Ventures. Thanks to all of you for being here. We're going to spend about an hour together where I've got some fabulous questions lined up for our wonderful panel, whom I'll introduce shortly. But we want this interactive. So before we begin, by way of raising hands, who here is a founder? Oh, nice. Who here is actively raising? Awesome. Now, I think it's the minority, but who here is an ecosystem partner? Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here. All right, I'm going to allow my panellists actually to introduce themselves, and we'll start here with Silk.
Hello, good morning, and fantastic to be here. So my name is Silk. I'm one of the principals at Blackbird. We're one of the largest funds in Australia, and we primarily focus at the very early stage. So we love pre-revenue, sometimes even pre-product companies, pretty vertical agnostic, but we are multi-stage, so we love to go early and then back those companies in, hopefully from Series A, B, C, and well beyond. I'll keep it short and simple and pass to...
My name is Adrielle. I am an investment manager at AirTree Ventures, and I've been there for just under 2 years. We invest across the full life cycle of a company, from pre-seed all the way to growth just before IPO. And we have just raised our 5th fund. I primarily work in sort of growth investing, but I also do early stage investing.
Hi, my name is Sian, McLachlan. I am a practice leader at LegalVision, which is a full-service commercial law firm. I head up their capital raising team, so helping scale-ups and startups raise their pre-seed all the way through to Series C and beyond.
Thanks, Sian. My name is Kat. I'm the head of growth and ventures at Nomos. We are a one-part technology consultancy. So in a nutshell, we build the digital parts of your businesses. So think everything from web to mobile apps, and increasingly, most of our portfolio is now AI. What we do is we try to carve some of the profits that we make from that business to then actually invest back into startups. So we also have a venture side, and we try to bring the dollars in pretty early, so at the seed level, and we really try to support startup founders who don't necessarily always get access to funding, and are doing things that are very for good. That is aligned to the ethos of who we are at Nomos, and Nomos as in Rolling Stone gathers Nomos.
Awesome. My name is Sabrina. It's so lovely to meet you all and see some familiar faces as well. I currently work with Aura Ventures, which is a VC firm that invests in Australian and New Zealand companies a little earlier than my colleagues on the panel, but we focus on seed stage. Please don't take my tardy arrival as a reflection of my work ethic. I love my job, I love my work, I'm so happy to be here. And my kind of background, I've been with Aura for, this is like no sense of time when you're working in these roles, a year and a little bit. But I have spent some time dabbling in different parts of the ecosystem where I have met many people in the audience actually. So previously working in ecosystem roles with fish burners, and then prior to that also in the banking space, so boring corporate banking, which brought me over to this part of the business. I also currently work in the university space, so UNSW founders in the audience, but I teach there part-time. And so I have the pleasure of interacting with so many different facets of the ecosystem. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and really focusing on women So thank you.
Wonderful. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lauren Kalauti. I'm the Chief Revenue Rocketeer at Scalare Partners. We are early stage technology investors. That's how we started 5 years ago. We have a slightly different operating model. So we have a portfolio of 30 investee companies, and 50% of our business, the top line revenue we generate for the business goes back into the investments, a little bit like what Kat said at Nomos. Last year we acquired Tech Ready Women, some of you are familiar with, participants, alumni of. We acquired In-House Ventures in February this year, and most recently we acquired Tank Stream Labs. So we're going through a huge transformation to be sort of that one-stop shop when it comes to investing. We're not mutually exclusive though, right? So we co-invest with a lot of our peers. We are absolutely passionate about the ecosystem as well, and passionate about supporting women who are looking to raise and grow their businesses. So, thank you everyone for your wonderful introductions. Let's start with a question that I feel passionate about, and 2 years ago was asking the exact same question. There are so many different types of capital out there. Hear about VC, hear about debt. The managing partner at Scalare even corrected me when I called us a venture capital firm. He said, no, we are early stage technology investors. And I thought, wow, there's a nuance here and there's a difference to all the different types of investment that's out there. So my question to each of you is, when founders are thinking about all the different types of funding that exists, what's your advice? And perhaps even give us context about your fund and the types of investment that you do. Go for it.
My advice would be to take stock of how much money you want to raise and what you want to use that for. So really understand the kind of milestones that you want to achieve with this capital, and that may help inform where you get that capital from and what kind of partner that you want to work with. So, a VC can be very beneficial in helping you with introductions, helping you scale your team, being on your board. Maybe it's that you want to get to your next milestone of building out your MVP. Maybe you'll just need a grant for that, or, So there's a lot of different things that you can get out of your capital partner. It's never too early to go to a VC, but it's really what you want. So I think, my advice would be to just really think about what you need, and as such, who do you want to work with for that?
Just to layer on top of what Adrielle said, I think, lots of people in the startup space focus on VC funding. It's the most sexy kind of funding. It's the one that gets the most airtime. But there's definitely other ways to fuel your business. So customer revenue is a really great source of non-dilutive funding that lots of people, maybe don't consider. Debt is another one. I know debt scares, lots of people are scared of that idea and the idea of repayment, but there's lots of special venture debt lenders in the space that have really flexible terms that can suit your company based on where you are in terms of revenue and growth. So it's definitely worth, taking stock. Don't just jump at the first offer that comes to you. Actually think about the trajectory of your company and what you'll be spending that money on and what's going to be working best depending on those revenue forecasts.
I think really great advice from the other panelists. To be additive, I would say, one way that you could take stock and think about it is there's two ways to survive as a business. One is to make money and through customer and revenue. Another is to raise capital. And so that there are two basically ways to survive and increase your runway. So one way to think about that is how might I build an engine around both? Because that will give me sustainability. A lot of advice I give to a lot of startup founders early on is you want to think about investment not as events, because I know when I was new in the game, I also thought about it as events. Like, I need a Series A, I need to hire my team now, or they will leave. So I think of capital raising as events. What you should think about it is actually take a step back and think about the full landscape and really think of these two things as life forces for your business and build an actual strategy around both. And to Sian's point, there is a lot of type of capital out there, so do spend the time to understand what each of those bits of capital mean, because every time you're taking investment, you're also giving something up in exchange for that, and there are pros and cons with each of those types of capital. So for example, a VC, which as Sian alluded to, is kind of like the most sexy of the forms. It gets a lot of press. VC, the model of VC, like, take some time to understand, how do VCs make money? Taking some time to understand, how does their business model work? And to give you a little shortcut, VCs are usually looking for 10x. So the team are looking for those really ambitious, like 10x style, that kind of venture growth speed and scale. And so if that's the business you want to build, that's amazing. You should definitely be approaching VCs. But there's also many other types of businesses you can build that is potentially not that scale. And there might be other capital that suits as well. So but I do love VC. VC has definitely unlocked a lot of deep tech and a lot of really incredible companies. I think it is very sexy. And I also think that it's not the only one to support your business. It's not the only lifeline.
Maybe I'll just add with an example. I'm all for creative capital stacks. I think I always tell founders, be greedy with your equity. It's the most important thing you have, and having strategic control of your company long term is something that we want for our founders, and we really dream of generational companies, and to do that you do need to own 51% or more of that company, and we want founders at the helm, and we want founders to be making those decisions. And now, I think to everyone's point here, VC is VC capital, sure, but as companies mature, there's capital stacks that you can get creative with. So some practical examples could be, I've seen a company raise a Series B recently, and they've done a customer crowdsourcing allocation, which practically means, and this company was in the health tech space, so they got clinicians that were early advocates of their product, and they brought them on board as angel investors in a pooled allocation fund. They also looked at non-dilutive funding, because again, when we come back to equity and we want them to retain as much of it as possible, if, as a VC partner, you're looking to bring on great co-investors, great allocation partners, so that the company and the founders succeed. So it's in your interest to look at alternative sources of capital and create a stack that really helps that company move forward. So we have customer crowdsourcing, we have non-dilutive grants, we have the R&D incentive, which has been wonderful in Australia as well. So I will say it's not always as binary as equity funding, at least with Blackbird, and we definitely help our founders get creative with that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Sabrina, do you want to talk a little bit about your advice and the different types of funding?
A tiny little bit, because everyone said really, really insightful things, and I really resonate with a lot of what's been said. I think to really emphasise, VC funding is so often put on a pedestal, but it's also such a mystified kind of pathway, and a lot of the reason I actually ended up working in this space was because it was really portrayed as the kind of goal for everybody is to land in the VC kind of orbit. But when I worked at Fishburners, we partnered with Westpac to put together a program to support grassroots programs for funding women starting small businesses, which was so incredible, such a great initiative, especially for people who wanted more of a de-risked way of actually starting to dabble in and grow their businesses without that real commitment and that real shift in the ownership to their business model. Also during that time, we saw a lot of people go for grants and funding and government, which gave them an incredible pathway in terms of the kind of institutional support that they would get with integrating into industry. I think you really want to look at it on a case-by-case basis and really be critical and really remember that you're the one building the good thing. It's not the VCs holding all of the strings, and that actually when you look at your business and you look at what's best for your business, it might not be VC, and you want to get really clear on internally why that is the case. And when you look at your capital raising strategy and your stack and all the different options, also think about how that particular method is going to change the way that you operate, because that's a key difference that comes with the different funding strategy that you go for. So your day-to-day operations, if you go down the VC path in 12 months' time, is going to look quite different to if you go for debt funding or if you go for grants. Considering the industry that you work within, the size of your team, you personally, kind of what do you want your life to look like? Those are all questions that you actually need to answer when you're thinking about this as well. So I'd say that, really take the time, don't make assumptions, look at other companies on the pathway that you want to be on, but kind of further ahead, and that can really help guide your decisions as well.
Yeah, all wonderful points. And picking up on what Sabrina's just said is, I meet with a lot of founders and I often find asking what their why is. Why are you raising? You know, what are you looking to do and to achieve is a really important thing to be crystal clear on. What is your end goal? Is it for an exit? Are you building the startup intentionally for an exit? Are you building because you're a mission-driven founder? All the different things, and being very clear on that can help you align with the different types of funding that are out there, whether it is attaining a grant or R&D incentive from the government, whether it's non-dilutive capital, whether it's venture funding as well, so a bit of an exchange of, you know, getting your tech built in exchange for equity, if it's cash, debt, all of those great things. And so I think it would be really interesting to ask, once again, all of you, what are the kinds of things that you're looking for within the founders and the companies in which you invest in? Silk, maybe you'd like to go first.
So ambition, and that can be relayed in a multitude of ways. I think a lot of people relay ambition to talking the big talk. That's not quite how I see it. It's certainly displayed in, for example, building a product that is that delights a customer and building that quickly, understanding the customer pain points, doing a bunch of discovery, moving quickly with that, understanding their engagement, understanding the metrics that matter, telling me something that I don't understand about a space, kind of building this thing with or without us, like that feeling of we're hanging on to your coattails is like the feeling I want to get in a meeting or a pitch. And so I look for, I guess, those seedlings of ambition that show up in your behaviour and your actions and what you're building and how you think about it, how much you care about the customer, how much you're thinking about pricing. You're not looking for answers from a VC, I hope, ever. You're looking for support at the right moments and a great relationship that hopefully lasts a decade plus. And so I would say at the top of the list is certainly ambition demonstrated in sort of the velocity that you're running and your understanding of the product you're building. I'll pause there and let everyone else add to that.
Thank you.
I totally resonate with that answer. And just double clicking on the customer point, I think with a business model, the thing that I look for first is there a clear problem, and is that problem clear to me? Do I understand from the founder what the customer needs help with, and is this business solving that? And so it seems like a very obvious point to make, but I think it's really important to keep revisiting that along the journey, because these problems are not static. You know, things are moving quite quickly, and so you want a founder that's also very receptive to feedback, both from their customer, you know, and other, you know, stakeholders in the ecosystem, to keep reiterating on what they're solving, make sure that the customer is at the center of everything that they're doing. So I think it translates in the founder when you meet them, in how they, I guess, communicate what that problem is and how they're solving it. It translates in the numbers, as Silk touched on, with the metrics that they're looking for, translates into the engagement. So really just making sure that the problem and the customer are at the center of both the business and the founder's attention.
Sian, would love to hear, I know you're going to skip past, no, would love to hear from you, right, from LegalVision's point of view. You're working with founders in a different way. Absolutely love to hear your thoughts.
So I mean, I obviously don't have my own investment criteria, but I definitely see the founders, you know, who both get rejected and accepted by VC funds. And I think to kind of echo your points, I think you do have to have a really clear pitch. So I know a lot of founders, like early in their journeys, will like reach out to the VCs, and I think relationship building is important, but I think you also need to be very open with the VCs about how you're approaching that conversation. So if you're not at the stage when you're looking for investment, I think you need to be upfront about that, because the VC will approach that conversation very differently. Versus if you come to them and say, oh, I am looking for investment, then they'll start asking you lots and lots of questions about, like, what problem are you solving? Like, where are you going with this? And if you can't answer those questions, the VC will, you know, form their point of view and maybe pass on that investment opportunity. So I think just being open about where you are at in your journey, and also, being really clear about what you're wanting from that conversation with them.
Thanks, Shan. That was really great advice. I think to be additive, I'll probably break the question down into two lenses, like what do we, Nomos, look for, but also more generally, what do, in my experience, investors more broadly look for? I guess in a nutshell, when you're approaching investors, like how do they work? How do they make money? All right. And so a lot of investors make money when you grow in how much you're worth or your valuation grows. So an important thing to understand is when you're coming to approach investors, how their business model works. And what you're trying to do is say, believe in me, I have this incredible vision, and if you gave me this X amount of dollars, I'm going to make it grow for you. I'm going to help you grow your, essentially, your wealth, your business. And so I think approaching investors with, yes, that kind of lovely vision of the future that you're building, but also really practical evidence of how you're going to get there. How does this little bit of seed or this injection at whichever stage it is, how is it going to uplift your value as a company and then deliver them value? So I think that's really important. And sometimes startups will do either thing where they get really visionary and you can't see the practical steps there. And often with that vision and ambition, they also create goals for themselves that are unachievable, you know? And so you're beholden to this milestone that is actually doesn't have the building blocks to get there. So my advice to startups is always be honest to yourself and your investor and build practical, achievable steps. Yes, you can definitely climb Everest, and you start at base camp. But make it practical, make it achievable, and because that's what investors are looking for. You have to understand that me, having worked with a lot of investors, they're real qual people. What I mean by that is quantity and like the qualitative side of things. So they listen to stories, they read people, they build relationships, but they're all quant people as well. So they're like, how believable is this? What is the data? What is the facts? What have you done before? Give me evidence. And so it's something to think through. That's kind of a very general investor lens. I think from a Nomos lens, what we particularly look for, I wouldn't call us an institutional investor like any of my peers here. We more look for trying to unlock good things in the world. So we want to invest in companies and startups that are changing the world in really meaningful ways and would like to bring in a technology partner or some seed capital to help them unlock that. That's what we kind of really care about, and that's what we look for.
Awesome. So I think to add on in terms of the original question and what we look for in founders, and something that probably hasn't been mentioned, for us, for me, I'm not even talking from Aura Ventures' perspective. This is just from, I'm not loyal to them, I'm loyal to you. But this is kind of my thinking from what I've sort of seen. I think a lot of the time, the founder matters almost more than the business, at the core. So, and I've actually seen this from the learnings from seeing a fund active over sort of 5 to 10 years and seeing how it plays out over time as well. I think there's so much attention placed on the initial raise and the initial close, and then no one ever hears about what actually happened afterwards and what actually were the outcomes of that. And I think that the really, really great founders are the ones who have self-awareness. They're the ones who are actually coachable, can actually look at a situation and say, look, this hasn't worked out, I need to pivot, or can take on the advice of someone, or is aware of their own blind spots, is aware of where their weaknesses are, and have a contingency plan around mitigating what that risk is going to mean for the investors, the people that they are giving jobs to, their customers, everyone. So kind of understanding how your work is so much bigger than just you and what you created and how good you feel about it, and the kind of ripple effects of the work that you do, I think is a really valuable trait. And to touch on kind of what's also been said as well, one thing to know, especially when it comes to VC funding, is timing is such a huge part of capital raising. And some of you may be aware already, but especially with venture capital funds, there are seasons where all they're doing is focusing on deploying. And there are other seasons where actually that's kind of not happening and they're raising. And so, in one way you could say that if the timing doesn't work, the timing doesn't work, but then also it means that it could be anytime, anywhere. So every conversation that you have is an opportunity for you to Every engagement that you have showcases something about you as a founder in some way, even if it has nothing to do with selling the product or talking about the product. You having a conversation about how you think about certain problems or how you engage with other people are all different kind of cues that investors, your peers, can pick up about how you work and how you operate and how you think and how you problem solve. And you want to be that person that no matter what you're building, as soon as you say, hey, I'm building something, everyone wants to be involved in it. Like, that's what you actually want to build up. You want to build up that kind of credibility, and that's just being someone who is reliable, someone who is really intelligent, someone who's self-aware, someone who has integrity. And so if you radiate all those things in whatever you're doing, and then you come with the conviction that you're going to commit to something 110% and give everyone a reason to pay attention, I think that's actually your best strategy, but that looks different for everybody. So that's
Yeah, you bring up such a great point. There's a fabulous quote called, "How you do anything is how you do everything." So if you are absolutely committed to raising that capital, think through how you're responding to the investors, what your pitch looks like, all the little micro moments. Make sure you're executing to the absolute best of your ability, because it will all be picked up and absorbed in some sort of way, right? I'd love to share a really quick story. So there's a guy called Chad Stevens who exited to REA Group, and his first check after hundreds of no's was from car sales. And car sales set up their very first corporate fund because they believed in him and his co-founder. The check size was $250K, and Chad and his co-founder 15x'd that investment on the liquidity event to REA Group. Anyway, the feedback he got from the very first meeting with the chairman of car sales at the time was that he didn't pretend to know the answers to every question that they fired at him. And so I think that really emphasises that attribute of being authentic as a founder. You don't have to pretend that you know the answers to everything, but one thing you can control is doing your research on the fund that you're actually approaching or the investor that you're approaching. So picking up on, Sabrina, what you said, know the season. Has the fund recently raised? You know, have they deployed? What's that all looking like for them? And take that in and adapt and tailor your pitch accordingly. And so on that note, I'm wondering about some of the pitches that you guys have seen and what has stood out and, you know, sort of made them unforgettable. No. Kat, you go first. You go first.
I mean, I've had the privilege of seeing so many pitches, either where we're helping the founders like build their technology or they're pitching to us. It's really hard to pick a favourite. I can describe the quality that the really good ones have in common, and the quality is this, that the founder, to Silk's point, has almost a magical energy to them about how strong their conviction is towards this cause. So much so that they're painting a world that doesn't exist, but you can see it. And as a person listening, like, all the hairs in your body raise, and you're like, I want this. I want this to exist in this world, and I kind of want it now. And I think that is a really good quality. And if you're building a business and it's something you really want to see in the world, then I guess let that radiate, because I think that energy is what helps you build a really good business and helps bring other people in the journey. I guess a publicly available thing that everyone can look up, and I often tell founders, is, so some of you may be familiar with the brand Canva. That is one of Australia's unicorn. And Melanie's deck is actually online. So Melanie wrote a really beautiful blog, which I think all startup founders should read, that documents in detail her entire journey of capital raising. And as someone who I think is a woman who raised the most capital ever in Australia, like ever, it's just free content out there for you to absorb. And when I read Melanie's story, what I see is a lot of tenacity, a lot of resilience, and a lot of learning who you're talking to throughout that journey, and also learning deeply about your customers, getting obsessive about having that customer empathy, continuing to test things. It's a beautiful, very raw, she shares multiple versions of her pitch deck for you if you want to see the journey, and she talks every step of the way how she got there, and I actually think it's such an incredible thing for, I imagine, a very busy person to do and put out there. So if you want to see an example of that deck journey for someone who historically has raised the most money ever in Australia, it's there. Dig it up. It's on her Medium. That would be kind of my advice.
That's an awesome tip. I actually personally didn't know that was out there and available. Would anyone else like to add in regards to the pitch?
I'd love to. I'd actually just touching on their presentation. They've done a roadshow recently, gearing up for our IPO that's coming, and I will say the slide deck hasn't changed all that much, which speaks to the clarity of thought and the clarity of mission that McLachlan have had over the last 13, almost 14 years. So some of the examples that I've seen have been, how do I put this? They're not necessarily polished. Like, this is like a lot of the things that a lot of the panelists spoke about that cut through, I think, in my opinion, are like secondary effects of having that extreme obsession and focus on the customer you're building for and the pain point and the type of product that will serve that incredibly well. How do you get customers on-ramped frictionlessly? How do you, like, just that extreme obsession and focus? The secondary effect of that is it resonates really well with who's listening to you. We have a good understanding of your domain and how you're thinking about the next few steps. I just feel like all of that comes out of your obsession with what you're building. We're not here to trip you up or entrap you with questions. It's genuine curiosity. So I think if there's a question that doesn't land or you don't know how to answer it, another way that I've seen it, rather than saying I'm not sure, is like, that doesn't matter, this does. Like, having a really strong hypothesis on what your product bets are, what your GDM bets are. We're not right. We're not building the product. We're so curious about what you're doing. And so, tell us about that. I think a lot of the second order effects fall out. And so some examples would be that are like unpolished but really resonate, like Heidi Health, for example. When they pitched the pre-seed, Tom came up in his scrubs after a night shift. He's a doctor. And Waleed, it was kind of like on a different line with really patchy internet. And so for a lot of people will be like, oh, that's not practiced, you haven't done your work, you haven't done your pitch. Man, they painted a picture of the future that was beautiful. It was this idea, and this was 5 years ago, of having this AI care partner on your desk at all times for any clinician anywhere. And this was 5 years ago, pre this big sort of AI uprise. I was thinking about that then, and so they delivered this vision of the future. They talked very critically, and they understood their customer. They were like, clinicians don't want to adopt new tools. They have their ways of working. They have studied 20, decades, 12, 20, whatever years to get to where they are. They rely on their competency and their cognition, and so they're not going to adopt this just because we say so. And so this is how we're thinking about our go-to-market bet. This is how we're building advocacy within clinician groups. This is how it's going to kind of trickle up and spread out in different communities. This is how people are going to refer the product. This is how we're going to go. This is our angle of attack. And so that in and of itself was incredibly convincing. Another example that happened recently, which I like to tell because it's a little bit left field. We don't do barely any consumer products. It's just not something that we play in. But Annabelle Hay and Lucy Hay of Clutch Glue recently pitched us. And Annabelle, it was so compelling. She sold us on what is practically a tube of glue. And we made an investment. It was kind of the kind of bet where you're like, I don't care what you're building, which is interesting because we talk a lot about like product and founder and what matters at what stage. I did not care what she was building. Her insight, understanding, her pace, her velocity, her storytelling, whatever she built, there was something, like that was a journey I wanted to be on, and so there was no doubt. And so again, I'm trying to like paint like kind of these edge cases that appear and happen and don't tick all the boxes necessarily, but fundamentally they're focused on certainly the founder's understanding and the product bets and the go-to-market bets and the depth of that understanding. We're not right, they're right.
Awesome examples. Sabrina, you got any? Yeah.
Does anyone here use Tixel? Does anyone here go to music events? Yeah. So Tixel came into our portfolio end of last year. And if anyone doesn't know the story of those founders, Zach, who was one of the co-founders, he is a music guy who lives in Paran in Melbourne, if anyone knows Melbourne quite well. Gorgeous area, amazing, amazing office. There's like an old abandoned warehouse that they've added records to. And he basically missed out on getting Tame Impala tickets pre-COVID and was really upset about it, and then just started building Tixel. And started building Tixel pre-COVID, great timing. And then COVID came, terrible, terrible time, but kind of just kept doing it. And kind of, he was working in the industry, but he kind of just saw this problem, and he's just such an ordinary dude. And so in terms of the whole kind of notion of being really polished and being really, slick and being a really kind of, the business acumen side of things and what does a founder look like, what do they sound like, you want to erase all of the things that you think you know about it and just go back to like unlocking who you are and why you're doing it and why you believe it's important and anchoring yourself in that every time. I think the thing I really love about the Tixel co-founders is they've never strayed from the reason why they started this in the first place. They wanted to make sure that ticketing for anyone who loves music or anyone who wants to go and enjoy these parts of their life isn't affected by scalping or unethical kind of practice out there in the world and how ridiculous it was becoming. And that mission is so simple, but it's also so relatable. And it is a little bit on the edges of what we usually kind of look at, but the unit economics were so good because what they were doing resonates with everyone or everyone who knows someone who, goes to music concerts or enjoys, wants to engage in that part of their life. So their pitch as well was very kind of like it had a story to it that was so incredibly relatable. It was so normal. Their vision was really simple and it actually just made a lot of sense. And it was kind of like, why doesn't that exist? Like we shouldn't live in a world where people are paying $20,000 for a Coldplay ticket, It was just kind of, I don't even need to be convinced, like that's right. It was just no one was already doing it. And the fact that they had kind of gone through COVID and still managed to get it off the ground was an enormous testament to their grit and their resilience, and also the fact that they weren't over-glorifying what they were doing. They're like, we just want to make it work because we still need it. This pandemic is going to end and then concerts will be back, doesn't change anything. So that kind of down-to-earthness is also something that's really nice. It's not applicable to every case, every business, but I think that's an example that I quite appreciate.
Yeah, I've got an unforgettable story, but not in a positive way, right? It goes back to being down to earth, being authentic. I posed a question to someone who was pitching, and my question was very sincere with no obnoxious intent, I assure you, but the person turned around and said, well, you tell me. So my question was, what would compel me to pay for your platform and pop my health data in your platform rather just making a note in my phone, right? I was just trying to say, because some of you may or may not be aware, but often we're not competing with explicit competitors. We're competing with the status quo, like people doing nothing to solve the problem, right? Anyway, and her response was, well, you tell me. And I thought, oh, that feels a bit off. I wish she should have said, that's a great question, Lauren, and that's something I need to think through more, if she didn't know the answer to that question. So that's been unforgettable, feeling like you need to know the answers to everything when you're in that high stakes moment and pitching. I'm sure you all agree, being humble is definitely a positive standout versus feeling like you need to know the answers. All right, how are we going for time? Because my watch's battery has stopped and it says that it's 10:30. Oh, wow, okay, cool. I would love to know, and I'm sure everyone in the room would love to know as well, let's say you've gained that success, you've nailed your pitch, you've tailored it for the person you're pitching to, you've given them that magic, bringing them on the journey, and now you're in the investment process. What on earth does that look like?
Adrielle,
I'd love you to share.
So you'll probably be meeting with, and it depends as well, we were talking about before, there's so many different ways to get capital. So, I mean, let's just talk from a VC perspective, because that's easy, that's what we do.
Sure.
But you'll probably be meeting with a lot of different VCs, a lot of different funds, and going through, pitching and funding and all the stuff with legal contracts and all of that. That is such a small part of the full investment journey. And I think that's something that we should really touch on today. The investment journey is, generally speaking, a good 10 years. These funds are generally 10-year funds. Of course, some firms have, some businesses have earlier exits, and some of those funds extend the fund life. But it is quite a long journey that you have. So you really have to think about the kind of partner that you want to partner with. You're going to be growing your business with them. You're going to be, probably having some of these investors on your board, and they'll be advising you on how to spend your money and when to raise again, and all these different things that you can go to them with. So this is a long process, and portfolio management is something that's a big part of what we do as VCs. So I think the funding is very important, but I think in that funding period of time, you should really think about the kind of partner that you want to work with, and
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, and very good to think about it as that long-term partner, because I think that is sometimes lost sight of. If you are honing in on the little bit that comes just before the raise and also before that money comes in, once you have your investors locked in, you'll then commence the process of due diligence, and how deep that process is will depend on what stage your company's at. If you're pre-seed, there's probably not a lot to do diligence on, so it's really just asking questions about your team. And then as part of the raise itself, they'll also ask for you to get a few documents in place. So they might ask for you to put employment agreements in place. And one of the other big focuses is IP, so making sure that everything that's in your brain now actually belongs to the company that they're investing in. So it's really important as part of that process to partner with a great legal partner who can help you make sure that you get all that into place, but also making sure those documents work for both you and not only the investor, because, all investors, like as they say, they're looking to partner with you for the long term, but you do also have to be remembering that there are some places where your interests might diverge, and it's really important to make sure you've got good counsel outlining where those bits are. The two most important things for a founder are often ownership and control, and those are the bits of the piece that get most heavily negotiated as part of a raise. So making sure you understand, okay, in what circumstances could I have to give up my shares? What kinds of decisions will I need to go to my investors for sign-off? Different founders are sensitive to different points. Some founders don't care. They actually want, VC input on all their decisions. Others have sensitivity to certain decisions. They really want to make sure that they're in control of those. So all up, I would say, from the time of finding your investor right through to getting funds, it can vary. Usually we say somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks, but depending on how fast people move, it can happen a lot quicker than that.
So to be additive, I would say that when you're thinking about investment and that whole process, try and work with the investors that you've already thought about partnering with to walk you through a bit of that timeline. In my experience, from both sides, from the startup side and the investor side, it always takes longer than you'd like to. We're usually all quite ambitious, I think, as founders, but we're also quite ambitious on the investment fund side too. So give yourself some wiggle room, give yourself some time for the due diligence, because it actually takes quite a lot of work, particularly if you're a startup and you don't have a legal team and you don't even have a team. So just think through some of that, work with the investors that you're working with to understand the timeline and be very realistic. From a NOMOS perspective, as I said, we are not, I would say, institutional investors, so we're pretty easy. Our investment committee is our 3 board members. So those are the only people you have to convince, and I usually put together the paper that goes to the board. So we're pretty easy, and if you work with other venture studios, they might be a little bit easier to work with as well. And we don't try to give you an evaluation and set your price, I guess. What we do is a safe note, which is essentially the easiest way. When you raise and your table establishes that price, we'll just go in with that price, because we don't want to really set a price on you. We want you to be able to do that as part of your journey. So that's how we work in Nomos. It's pretty easygoing, but understand the process of who you're working with and the timeline, and then add a little bit more to that timeline.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing that hasn't been spoken about sometimes, what we also do is, especially because we come in at seed stage where you don't necessarily have your product perfect yet, you might not have product market fit yet, we'll go out and speak to customers or other people working in the industry that you're trying to disrupt to just get a better idea of kind of, how they would digest the product and get some of that feedback as well. Every shop is going to work quite differently. So I'd say that's kind of part of your courting process, is understanding, ask the question, what does your due diligence process looks like? How has that looked in the past? And just sort of get examples so that you know just as well what you're signing up for and what the expectations are. I think setting expectations is everything, and front loading that conversation around, what your goals are, what your intentions are, what your needs are is just as important. And that whole kind of process is very dynamic, very iterative. It can get blown out, it can be really quick, it really depends on your case. So really just being communicative about that is really, really important, I would say.
Silk, is there anything you'd add?
Oh, sorry. Losing my voice a little bit. I'd say we think of the deal team partnership as quite literally a marriage, and so the dating goes both ways, and you don't want to get involved with a partner that you don't trust. And so practically everything we do, everything we design, all our programs, how we invest, our IC, revolves around building relationships, building high trust relationships, and practically earning the right to invest in your round at the beginning and hopefully follow on through. And so in terms of how that translates into process, we're on your timeline. So we will default to speed. So if you're ready to fundraise, we try to get to quick no and quick yes. So 48 hours to a no, 22 weeks to a yes, to really let you meet more of the team and go through sort of an IC pitch process. But if you tell me, hey, I'm not ready to fundraise, I just want to talk through my product and get some feedback, that's the type of conversation we're having. I prefer those types of conversations versus going straight to sort of a transactional relationship. But the best investments and the best relationships have always come through building that relationship and spending the time and understanding the product. And those little moments before you've actually invested go a long way, downloading the product or buying it or purchasing it, trying it out, talking to some customers, introducing them to interesting people they think that might resonate with them, or help them shortcut heuristics of how they're thinking about different approaches on product or go to market. All of it is not just our relationship building, but it is the relationships we have in the network that could benefit that founder even pre-investment. And so I think about it a lot as always, what will help you succeed? It's not about this is our timeline and therefore you adhere to it. It's how do I help you fundraise at the time that's best for you? How do I earn your trust so that can happen and can translate? And if it's not the partnership that is right, because we all have affinity for different types of founders, I want to make sure that out of respect of your time, we get to a very quick no, and we get to a no with feedback that is hopefully helpful. It's another input, but typically our process will be, we meet once. If we're going to a no, we'll have a discussion internally, and I'll come back with verbatim feedback from that discussion. If it's a yes, we just do that meeting a couple more times. I bring on another investor onto a deal team. Every investment has 2 investors on it, and that enables us to champion you internally, not just at pre-seed, but it's the internal sale, it's for the follow-on round, it's thinking about customers, it's thinking about relationships that could help you at each stage. Someone goes on mat leave, you always have someone there to champion you on through in the company, and then you repeat that one more time with an IC pitch. And from IC pitch, we make an investment decision within roughly 24 hours of that pitch. But it's really, we want to get to know you better. We're not testing you, we're not trying to trap you, we're not flinging you through a process that's redundant. We're trying to get everyone internally to be as excited and high conviction as the deal team is in your company.
That's an awesome insight. But at Scalare Partners, our check size for investment is 120 to 250K. So, like some of you, most of you, I think, you do see that early stage founders. And a lot of people come to us thinking that they're ready to raise, but they haven't got their data room in order, they haven't got financial modelling in order, they haven't engaged LegalVision, or, you know, to sort of get all of the contracts and everything, patents, IP, everything in order, your house in order, right? So maybe, Sian, just what's the main thing that you need to see prepared before you're genuinely ready to raise?
So maybe I'll start with two things. So first one is you need a company. So if you don't have a company set up, you can't take on equity funding. So whether that be, and sorry, we haven't actually clarified, there's different forms of equity funding as well. So mention has been made of safe notes, which is basically you're granting the investor right to acquire shares in you in the future. It's a great accessible form of funding that's fairly easy and quick to put into place, versus issuing shares, which is what we most of the time refer to when we're doing equity funding. But in either of those cases, yeah, you need a company set up, number one. Number two, I think the other thing that often trips my clients up, especially when they're coming to do equity funding, if they're issuing shares, is they haven't cleaned up their cap table. So often I have clients come and, you know, they've promised options to this person and they've promised safes to this person and they've done all of this and maybe it's not all documented, and that kind of stuff takes a long time to clean up sometimes, and it's also not a good look. If you've got AirTree and Blackbird waiting to go and you're like, just hold on a second, I just have to issue 10 more options to this contractor at this price, like it doesn't look professional and also holds things up. So those would be the two key things I have to say. So company setup and yeah, clean up your cap table.
I think just in general, in terms of what you need for the fundraise process, like you need to have a data room in order, you need to have any kind of financials that you have. If you're pre-revenue, any sort of traction or engagement metrics that we can look to, any sort of customers that you can introduce us to. As Sabrina mentioned earlier, we often do customer calls. So really get all of your ducks in a row in terms of putting your best foot forward. You know, you can tell us the pitch, but really get as much evidence as you can to kind of prove that with tangible metrics and feedback. The other thing I would say is, especially at the early stages, really think about communicating the opportunity in terms of the market size and how big this thing could get. You know, no one's expecting you to have everything, I guess, like the evidence of this in the early stages, but we want, as we mentioned earlier, the kind of returns that we're looking for with these big funds is we want to see this huge opportunity. So it depends as well which fund that you're going with, but really remember to, I guess, put your best foot forward in terms of communicating that with evidence. And it doesn't mean boiling the ocean and having this huge data room at the early stages. In fact, that will probably be less help. It's best to sort of keep it to the key points, but to have really great pieces of evidence and stuff for us to dig into.
I'll just jump in. I've got a strong bias, right, because I'm unapologetically sales, right? But so often I speak to founders and I'll unpack a little bit about their customers, and I think there's that spray and pray approach where that you might have customers and I'll say, can we get a testimonial from them about the product and whatever, and they'll say, I've just been billing them monthly and I don't even think they know they're using my tech. And yeah, and I hope that if I reach out and contact them, they're going to realise that they're paying X amount per month. And I prefer not to contact them, right? And so as you're putting your, there's lots of founders in the room, of all the priorities, like you're raising capital, you got to do, your financial modelling, your data room, your contracts, you're wearing so many different hats, but do not overlook how important your customer relationships are, because I think something we probably weren't expecting is for you guys to say, yeah, we want to do a customer interview, we want to get to know your customers, so making sure you pop just as much energy and time towards that as well. We're good with the audio? Yeah, I think I pulled on something. All right, I'm conscious of time. I've got one more question. Which one shall it be? So, one advice to the founders in the room to position themselves in, let's be frank, bit of a bear market, bit of a competitive market. What's one piece of advice that you've got to conclude the fabulous discussion today? I can see you all deep in thought. I'm wondering who to pick on. You look ready to go, Kat or Sian, yeah?
I was going to say beware the predatory advisor. So there are a few advisors out there who offer to, introduce you to investors or help manage your raise for quite a significant equity stake. Just be wary of that. I think, sometimes I have clients coming to me saying, I literally won't be able to do this raise if I don't engage this person. And if you end up in that scenario, maybe fair enough, but I'm also just see people giving away, more than you might give to your CTO to these kinds of people. So just beware.
I'll have you go next. I probably will try and squeeze in two things that jumped into my mind. One thing is that if you are looking to raise capital or you're looking to partner with an investment team, know that you can speak to their portfolio. And that's a really good way before and post, like joining the marriage, as it's called, to learn more about the fund. Like, how do they work? What does due diligence look like? And now with the magic of LinkedIn, it's very easy to find out who, and even on their websites, I think a lot of funds share that information. So yeah, I think have a human-to-human discussion. And I think founders are always infinitely generous. I know that founders are very time poor, but we're also all really infinitely generous about giving back because we know how hard it is, and to talk pretty frankly about what things are like. So do that reach out. I really encourage it. My other tiny bit of advice is to also kind of take care of yourself because it is fundraising, building a startup. It's all like a pretty long marathon. So yeah, build your own engine. Build an engine to stay energized and to stay focused, but also to add other bits into your life. I think, yeah, it's a long journey and it's tough, I'm not going to lie. And it's amazing when you can do stuff, but build a bit of an engine around yourself. Yeah, that's my...
Awesome.
My advice, and I think I'll speak to, the women in the room, mostly because that's what I was thinking about before I came into the session, but it is applicable to everybody. What I have found is that when you identify as a founder who is maybe a minority, where you haven't seen many examples of yourself already kind of in the communities that you want to be part of, those people tend to be the most crystal clear. They've had to do extra work, and that is your superpower. Like, you've had to put in that extra thought into having no room for error in what you're thinking about, what you're talking about. You're over ready, and I feel like lean into and trust that you have done the work. That's such a subconscious thing that I don't think many female founders are even aware that they're kind of at that level of self-awareness of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And treat every engagement as an opportunity to either flex that muscle, to build your confidence. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, that's always an opportunity. And also know that when you're pitching to an investor, like, they should be pitching you just as much. So that process, it's a partnership. At the end of the day, it's always a partnership. And know that you need to have things that are also your non-negotiables, your bottom line that you're looking for. Like, you hold power in those scenarios as well. And it is a really competitive market right now. It's not always easy. There are really good times. But to be honest, if it's a good time, it just means another bad time's coming. So if it's a bad time now, it means a good time is coming. So if you kind of reframe it that way, if you can make it through the times that are tough, that sets you up so well. I can't even tell you, like, even if you even remove kind of startups and investing, if you think about it from any other economic circumstance, it's the same kind of principle where if you're able to build resilience through an environment that's really challenging, you're going to be set up for whatever comes down the line. And I think it's the same kind of thing. And just always do what's best for you. Just put your needs first. And that's all. I said like 5 things. Yeah.
No, great.
My advice is... it's really simple, but I think we have to remind ourselves to really stay true to ourselves, and it's a bit to what you were speaking about, Sabrina, but really make sure that you hold that integrity. I think we also hear about the VC ecosystem, about founders and the famous founders over the last 20, 30 years that have passed through and had these amazing success stories. Some of them happen to be, really big personalities, and sometimes I feel like we may, be a bit hard on ourselves and say this is the ideal founder everyone wants because of this amazing story that we've seen or someone present. And I think we just have to remind ourselves it's not the case. Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is very different. And I think integrity, for me, integrity I think is probably something I put at the forefront of everything that I do, not just, looking for integrity in a founder, but in my colleagues and in my work and in my peers. So I think that would be my advice is, I think don't get distracted by the things people say. The things that everyone is looking for in every founder. I think there are some key things. A lot of the things everything we spoke about today is key. But I think always bring it back to that integrity, I would say.
Beautiful.
Just two practical things. Show me the product, don't talk about it, and just go for it. Deceleration is a killer.
Awesome. No. My advice is the one more thing. So when it's the end of the week, the end of the day, you've made so many outputs, so many inputs, you've hounded the phone, the email, just do one more thing and you'll be surprised at how that one thing can then come back around and be the very thing that led you to the outcome that you want.
Sorry, Laura, can I add one more thing in there?
Of course.
Sorry, I just had... as the lawyer, I would be killed for not saying this.
But the irony
yeah, one more thing. I would say if you do get a term sheet from a lovely VC, please get it reviewed. I know some people who go, straight in, they're just so excited and they sign it thinking, I understand the commercials, but there are often legal finicky points in there that can, really mean you might end up losing 5-10% of your company in circumstances in which you didn't realise. So LegalVision, we don't charge you up front for that term sheet review. We'll only charge you once the money comes in from the VC, but it's definitely worth that investment up front.
Good one. Awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is just set the tone for the rest of the event. Lainey, how long have we got for Q&A? Okay, fabulous. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw it to you now to invite your questions to the gorgeous panel here. We've got about 10 minutes for questions from you. We have some refreshments and some food over there. So after we hear all of your questions and make it interactive, the panellists are very kindly going to be sticking around. I'm sure you probably want to go up to them and meet them and hear about how can you perhaps throw your hat in the ring for their fund. But before I do all of that, I just really want to say thank you to the team that do a very good job of standing back when we're up here. So Sarah McCauley, Kerriana King, Megan Gardner and Lainey. And Francis, of course, and Murray from UTS as well, Jane as well. Where have you gone? There, you were behind the pole. Thank you so much for everything you did to make that possible. All right. We're going to keep this up on the screen while we throw it to you for questions. These are all the fabulous free resources that we are putting on off the back of the event today. So we have that link will take you through to book a meeting with me. So in transparency, I am not on the investment committee at Scalare Partners, but I do believe I can always connect you with one thing that would lead you to something that's going to help your business. We have a free consult at Nomos. Kat, would you like to speak to that?
Sorry, extrovert can talk without a mic. So it's two parts. So if you need some technology help, you're hearing all this stuff about AI, you're doing anything, we want to put some hours for you. So we want a free consult. You call us, ask us. I'll bring in our head of tech. I'll bring in our product people. I'll bring in our designers to answer the questions you have. We want to give that as a gift to everyone who's doing really cool, ambitious things and building your part of the business and your part of the world. And then also, if you are looking for investment, want to understand how it works, you can definitely also book a meeting with me. And also, a lot of the advice I give a lot of founders is, introductions to other investors, and also how do you think about investment, how do you think about growth, how do you think about global strategy and things like that.
Awesome.
And I can speak to the free legal health check. So LegalVision, we work with a lot of our clients on a membership basis, which basically means you get all of your business as usual legal needs covered for a fixed monthly fee. And so as part of the legal health check, we'll have a call with you, we'll run through your legal priorities for the next few months and put together a bit of a plan of how we can address those.
Awesome. All right, so over to you now. Love it. What's your name?
Lauren.
Lauren, nice to meet you.
Oh, no. Firstly, great session. I have a million questions, but I was just wondering if I could get just a bit of a statistical kind of update for the end of the year. Cap raising has been really tough. It's almost Christmas, so is there any kind of bits of advice you would give us, or do we know any funds that are open at the moment, like who to approach, that kind of thing?
Great question.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll speak to Blackbird. We raised a fifth fund 2 years ago, and we're just in the process now of raising a new one, and so that is officially open. 2025 funds. It's $1 billion. Not quite $1 billion yet, but we're aiming for another $1 billion fund. Just to give you a bit of an insight on how that's structured, so you understand the mechanics of that and the economics of what we're looking for and the type of companies that slot in there. So I'll talk to the 22 fund because that's already closed and full. That was $1 billion split 300 mil roughly for pre-seed to Series A companies. So we call it our core fund, and then about 700 mil for Series A and beyond. And that 700 mil is usually invested in companies that come out of the core fund. So we do a lot of follow-on investing, not exclusive. We have companies that have filled slots that are brand new growth stage companies, but typically it's to back in those pre-seed seed stage. Economics-wise, because of the size of the fund, and again, this comes back to the conversation around the types of capital that makes sense for you, at what time, and the capital stack that you'd like to put together. The economics mean we're really looking for really outsized returns, because very practically we're looking to return that $1 billion out of like the investment that we make in your company, and that's over a decade plus, and so there's time to grow into that and to grow that value. But it also means that at the very early stages we're looking at those leading indicators for, can this be an outsized return type of company and truly on the venture path? And so that would be kind of the heuristic I'd think of when you think of kind of Blackbird's funds. And then the good news is we're in the process now. We've done a first close and we're closing our 2025 funds, which should shape up to be a similar size overall.
Extremely similar to Blackbird. We have just raised our fifth fund, and it is split 250 mil in the early stage and 400 mil in the late stage. And so, yeah, we have our fund open for investment, very similar. Core fund is for pre-seed to effectively Series A, and then the growth fund is for Series B onwards. So we're also definitely open for investment.
I might just quickly shout out a resource that might be really useful to you, Lauren. I'm not sure if you're across it, but Cut Through Ventures does a pretty good industry landscape that pretty much has a fund list at the back saying what their check size is plus what their investment thesis is. I find that really useful. Most of the funds I know of that are large are on this list, so it's probably a really good it's free resource. I think you have to give them your email, but they're also a fund, so it's not a bad thing. But it gives you a bird's eye view of all the funds happening, and also who's getting the funds, so it's like an industry landscape. So that's Cut Through Ventures. We can even send it around in the follow-up email if that's useful to people. Also a reminder to think about grants, tax season, think about what can you get back in R&D, think about what's government giving, particularly if you're in a particular niche area. Like government gave MRFF, so that's like the medical-based fund, and they funded a bunch of AI stuff in that, which was quite sizable. Grants are another way. Reach out to talk to the startup agency of your state. I'm in Victoria, so I know LaunchVic pretty well. LaunchVic actually also does a sidecar. So that means that they will come in when another investor comes in and double down on you and not take as much equity. So again, it's slightly less diluting. So that fund is called Alice Anderson. But yeah.
Definitely agree. Cut through, amazing resource, so many resources out there. I actually would have also said for the advice question is just take. It's like just ask for things that you want, take what you can get, milk it. And that part of that as well is asking questions like this. And if you're getting a no, ask the same questions. You can find the yes. Every no gets you closer. For us, because I'm about to tell you a no, but I'm going to give you another pathway to find a yes, because we just wrote our last check out of our third vintage. We're actually in market raising, so I feel you. So we're not actively deploying right now. We likely will be this time next year. And that's why I say, even if that timing isn't aligning, your purpose is to spread your surface area as much as possible so that when the right timing does come along, it's ready to go. So I would definitely recommend checking out those resources. The Australian ecosystem is so much smaller than we think. Like, it's so tiny, and everyone is very generous, and everyone wants to help where they can. If they're not, it's because they're time poor, not because they're going out of their way to not help you. So go and seek, and just take. But I would say that, yeah, if there's and if you want to chat about kind of what you're looking for, and sometimes there are funds that just make a lot of sense for certain kinds of companies as well, and we're all quite well acquainted. We know someone who'll know someone who knows someone. Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer.
I'll add to that. Scalare Partners acquired In-House Ventures, platform that matches founders with investors, and so for under $1,000 a founder can jump on and be connected to investors that are relevant to the check size you're looking for and also your investment mandate. I also met someone at government at the Regional Investment Corp last week at a very non-startup event, who told me that they have $380 million to deploy, and I don't think they have a clue how to do it. So I don't know the answer to navigating the big beast that is government, but if you book a call with me, I'll try and find out before then. All right. Yes, thank you. Oh, thanks, Lainey.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for sharing your time this morning. I'm Lucy, founder of Tap the Gap. We're helping women build wealth while they shop. More on that later. But what I actually really wanted to ask was, the theme for today is raise like a woman. And given all the numbers that are really, up against us in the market out there, what does it mean to you to raise like a woman? I'd love to know.
Beautiful question.
I think that's such a good question, Lucy. And such a good tribute, because I actually know Lucy, so it's a real tribute to who you are and the cause that you're looking to take on as part of Tap the Gap. Also, huge shout out, if you think about wealth and personal wealth, and if you're thinking about your super, which you should, you know how women have a pay gap? Well, that is exponentially boosted through your super against you because of compound interest over the life of your super asset. So if you're not already thinking about your super, which I wasn't until I met Lucy, please go talk to Lucy. Really great question. I want to blow a few myths out there, which is myth number one is there just not as many women that found companies as men? That is not true. Are women getting less of the share? Yes. And that's why we're here. Women are getting less of the share, and it doesn't make any sense to any of my colleagues in any of these other funds, and that's why we're here. I think to kind of shine a bit of a light on that, the reason I joined investment at all was I was in a startup and we were capital raising 2 incredible female founders, and I was like, is it just me or is it different for us? And that's, the genesis of why I got into investment, to understand how the beast works. And I guess my first thing is, one, we have to have more conversations like this. You have to put yourself in front of investors. As I said, it's quant and qual, which means it's about the qualitative, the story that you're telling, and also it's about the number and the data, and it's about, increasing your surface area to exposure to investors, to that conversation. It's like if you're trying to look for a really good marriage, to Silk's point, you've got to date. You've got to go to the market. You've got to put yourself out there. And I think, like, my observation is, like, we're not getting the share, so let's take back the share, you know? And I have to say, as I said earlier, historically and data-driven way, a woman, Melanie, raised the largest amount of money ever in Australia. That was a woman, and she delivered. So if there's a reason what we aren't investing in women, it actually doesn't statistically make sense. So that's what I would say.
I would echo the point on, like, just take back the share in terms of just really going for, really selling that opportunity, and also ask for feedback from all of the investors that you speak to. If it is a no, really understand why it's a no. Speaking from personal experience, often I've unfortunately found that, and this is just anecdotally what I have come across, is unfortunately I've had to say no to a lot of female founders who are building products that are not in the mandate that I invest in. So really ask that question, because it's really important to clarify that and to call out, you know, and I guess hold everyone accountable for the reasons that they are saying no, because it may be a very, fair reason why they have to say no, for example, with a mandate, answer to that. But I think that's something that will help all of us as females break through the potential biases that may be, being experienced in the industry. If it doesn't make statistical sense, we've got to really call them out and yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it means an immense amount to me. It's a big part and purpose of why I'm in this role. On the founder side, my observations have been I don't think it's about doing more work. I'll often see female founders are overprepared, have the data room, have all the things we spoke about, have practiced the pitch, are polished. The only thing I can say is I'd just encourage, again, there's lots of seeds in what we already spoke about around finding the person, doing your diligence on the fund that is deploying, that has a partner you're interested in. Maybe the investor's female, that doesn't hurt, but that's not the only lens. Finding a person that you think you'll have affinity for and can build a relationship with. Relationships rule the world. They really do. And so the more you can increase your service area, as we spoke about, with great relationships and trusted relationships, a lot of the structural changes do, the onus of that does fall on the investors too. And so we think a lot about this in our programming, in our events, in our experiments, and we're very open to feedback. I run a series of events called, has a female focus. There's no mention of females or women on any of the messaging or the positioning in market, but I'm so open to feedback around, hey, this sucks and doesn't resonate. How do we, could this be a better format? And I'd be willing to attend that. And so would, two other people that I know. And I'm big on the hypothesis that great women know great women. And so, if I can be a part, if we can be a part of fostering that on this side of the table, I know we're all very open to that. And on the founder side, I don't think it's about more work. I think it's about just fucking going for it. I don't know how to, finding the right partner and just putting yourself out there. And I know it's a little bit of a frustrating answer, but if that results in one trusted relationship that can pull you forward, and if that person is me, I'm pulling you forward. The fight goes on internally too for women and different genders and different ethnicities and diversity. And so, a great example being Annabelle Hay, completely not a product we would invest in. A founder that was amazing in her own right, and deserved kind of that investment. That was a trusted relationship that we built together, and then I brought people on side internally, and then she got interest externally as well, and went on Shark Tank and pitched a bunch of investors that said no, but they had a great relationship with her and they knew her, and that's a warm connection. Now she's thinking about raising her next round, and she has 5 people that she's talked to at seed, being like, hey, are you still doing that thing? And so you just don't know how these relationships turn around. So I would just encourage, the TLDR is build great relationships, find great partners, and give us feedback too, because we're more the right people are more likely than not to implement that in terms of better access, better on-ramps, getting you to the right people.
If I think about feminine energy and masculine energy, right, which we all possess, but to raise like a woman to me means to raise with authenticity and humility. I think we had one more hand. Yeah, I think all we got time for? Yeah, I'm so sorry, but we'll be mingling shortly. Thanks, Alicia.
Hello, thank you. That's been wonderful. Following on from what you said earlier around the calibre of your pitch, how polished it is, how prepared you are, etc. My question is more around the additional information, marketing strategy, go-to-market strategy, the execution, design style, readiness, all the rest of everything that goes with it. How polished, prepared, ready does that need to be? Because obviously market forces, but also things like the amount of investment that is raised, things may pivot based on results of whether it be clinical trials, etc. You know, you never want to, your plans might be your goals might be in concrete, but your plans are in sand. So what are investors looking for when it comes to that readiness of that go-to-market piece?
So just a really quick answer to that is, I guess it depends on which stage you're at in terms, and I think some of the other speakers spoke to that earlier. My advice to startups is always, and I sometimes observe a lot of the women founders I work with or have worked for have this kind of like, men will just kind of put it out there in my experience, and women, like, we think a lot. My advice is always ask for advice rather than saying, hey, this is a pitch, can we just have a coffee for some advice, particularly if you're unsure, and then you learn so much about what the fund is looking for. You can also ask the question of the person you're meeting with, what is your expectation around what should I prepare prior to this meeting? And that is a really professional and kind of legit question. I kind of love when people ask me that, because then I can just be very specific. You know, sometimes funds have templates for these things. Also speak to another founder who's pitched the fund successfully, because then you know pretty bird's eye view. And a lot of founders who I've reached out and asked for this kind of advice have shared with me literally what they sent, and they shared with me all the iterations of improvement. So that's my 3 pieces of advice. 1, ask for advice before you pitch. Then you get like a one-on-one session basically for free. And then 2, ask another founder who's been through the journey, because then you can see it from their perspective. And don't feel like it has to be super duper perfect. I'm like this. I'm like, I can't send it until I've had 5 people review it. Just put it out there, because the feedback, I mean, a lot of what investors are looking for is evidence that you can take advice and that you can pivot. And it's trust building, right? You just do the thing that you say you would do, and you take on the advice and you improve. That's actually more of what investors are looking for than you coming in and being super polished and perfect. It's your ability to provide evidence of growth.
I might also add, a pitch deck is not a legal document, so you're not bound by what you put in there.
That's a good one.
The disclaimer I can give you advice on, but the contents of it, like, I've got plenty of founders who have put pitch decks together, raised huge amounts, started and then pivoted, and it's been fine. So I think as women sometimes we're a little bit reserved. We're like, oh, just, or maybe, or would this other thing be okay? I think just, pick your direction and go with it and see where you end up.
One thing I'd just add to that is also just keep in mind what stage that you're at when you're pitching to a VC. If you're at the pre-seed, we're not expecting you to have, a really, when we say polished answer, I think what we mean is to be really, clear and keep it simple and keep it short and sharp on all the points that you want to make. So polished doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have, all the answers for in the future. Like a go-to-market strategy is something that you'd have to worry about down the track, not in a pre-seed or a seed deck. You certainly need to be able to have a polished answer to talk to how you will do that in the future, but don't be too hard on yourself in terms of how much you have to have polished in the early stages. When I think about this term that we're throwing around, polished, and keep it simple and short and sharp, I think it's more about the story, the market, the problem, the customer, like the really key things that you're trying to sell the VC or the person that's giving you the money on. Just really think about, and there's so many resources out there about at what stages, what the VC is generally looking for. I mean, if you have data on how you've been able to scale users, even if you don't have any revenue yet, or how you've been able to scale engagement, give us that. Like whatever you have, just be super, clear and simple on that. But yeah, there is no right or wrong answer on exactly what you show.
If we're done, I would just say, pre-seed, it's like show me the product, show me your understanding of the customer. I don't care about polished. I care about credible. Like if it's a memo, hopefully it's a demo and it's you talking to it, and it's kind of like a deep understanding of the product drivers, the growth loops. Big product focus for me at Pre-Seed. When it comes to Series A and beyond, people do start anchoring on numbers, and it's less like 90% of the exercise of understanding your customers and your forecasts and getting more and more accurate at doing that. You know, the benefit should go to you in understanding, like, you know, this is how we're going to track in the next 6 months, next 12 months. If we're not tracking against that in the next couple of quarters, why? Great. It's usually like having, you know, things fail teaches you a lot, or not quite meeting the milestone. You're like, well, great, that didn't work. Let's kill that. Let's move in this direction. And so I think if you think like 10, 20 years ahead when you're a public company and you're reporting your quarterlies, and if you miss them, that's a big problem on your share price. And so if you almost backtrack to Pre-Seed or to Series A or Series B, you're trying to get better because that exercise helps you build a business that tracks well and has people that trust your instincts on go-to-market and trust the bets you're placing. Because like you said, you know, forecasts can be fantasy numbers, you know, marketing plan can work, cannot, pivots do happen. I think if you're just incredibly good at setting a credible path, not a polished path, but a credible path of what the go-to-market looks like in the next 6 months, and then reflecting on that, it didn't work, here's why, here's what we're going to do next. Just that like compounding effect of you're getting better at understanding what works for your business and your product and how to bring customers on board. And so over time, that should just get more and more accurate and more polished, and good things should happen as a result of all that learning. So I think the last thing I'll say is like, give us a little grace. We've seen a lot of draft versions of things, and so that's okay. That's okay.
All right, I think we'll leave it at that. It's wonderful though. Like I said, we're here till 12:30 with some refreshments over there and at the back as well. But thank you to everyone for coming today and being part of the conversation. Anything else?